My name is Sandra Dreyer, and it was Sandra McKay, and 15543, I like to say that quietly really, and I went to Brady when I was 15. My parents were both born in England. I had quite an unusual family actually, very creative. My father was a photographer, and he did weddings and bar mitzvahs and everything. But when he was very young, and they got married very young, my parents, and he volunteered for the Navy, for the war, because if he didn't volunteer, he would have gone into the army, and he particularly wanted to be in the Navy. So he ended up in the Fleet Air Arm, where he would go up in the planes to take photographs before and after the bombing, which is quite amazing when you think of how young he was. We didn't have the equipment that we have nowadays on the planes, you know, so it was really dangerous. And he came home a couple of times because my mother had me, and then my mother had my sister. But he was away for a long time after the war. He was the other side of the world on a fleet aircraft. So, and my mother was the most amazing dressmaker, just fantastic. She could see a picture of something and then just make it. In fact, later on, when my father was home, many years later, and he was doing much more glamorous photography, he worked for he was a press photographer, and he used to bring home the photos at night of models and film stars, and my mother would make me the outfit the next day. So I always had wonderful clothes. I'm the eldest of three sisters. Unfortunately, we lost our youngest sister. My next sister down, Elaine, who lives in Canada, we were only 1 year and 8 months between us. So glamour and fashion, everything was very much part of our family. Not very glamorous where we lived. Until I was 6, we lived in a slum, and a real slum. It was a so-called flat, but it had a scullery, not a kitchen. There was no window. It was just like an open space that should have a window. In there was everything that she, had in the kitchen. We had an outdoor shared toilet on the landing. We had one bedroom, and eventually there were 3 of us in that bedroom, and my parents slept in a put-you-up in the living room. So we lived there, and my father, when he first came home from the war, used to go to Trafalgar Square and photograph people, because everyone was still rejoicing a lot in London. And within this tiny scullery, he would develop his pictures with the developing trays and the enlarger and everything, and pin them around the house to dry, around the flat. And then when I was 6, we moved to a council flat that was very nearby. But again, the 3 of us shared a bedroom. We had 2 bedrooms. And I lived in that council flat until I was 18. I went to the local primary school, and then won my scholarship, as it was then, and went to the grammar school. And my sister followed me. My youngest sister went to Robert Montefiore, which was near Brady, and that was called a secondary modern school. Oxford St George's was just across the road from me, so I went there from when I was 5 in the Place Centre, and then I stayed there until I was 15. And then I was very much into drama, and Brady had this excellent drama teacher with this wonderful drama class. So I changed and went to Brady. Well, it was Miss Benjamin was the leader, and Miriam Moses was still around. She was the president of the club. They were pretty strict and straight-laced, really. Don't know what they would make of modern world now. Miss Benjamin ran the club very efficiently. She was very nice. She was, very kind, and very nice volunteers. But both the clubs had that, volunteer managers. The drama teacher was Frances Berman. She was this eccentric lady. I'm not sure how old she was actually. I would think she was quite elderly at the time, but very eccentric with bright red hair. She just adored working at Brady with the girls and directing the plays. But she also worked later, with the boys. But she hired the most amazing costumes for our performances. We entered the London County Council drama competition, and we did Mary Queen of Scots by Schiller. I was Mary, and we won the competition. And the adjudicator said, "You would never believe these girls came from East London." Of course, you're not allowed to say that now. And it was really a bit rude of her to say it then. But we were thrilled. We won the whole competition, beat them all. And it was an amazing production. And the costumes were outstanding. We really felt like we were in that time. And it was at the Scala Theatre in London. We went away on weekends and abroad. I mean, that was an amazing experience to go abroad. That was mixed with the boys when we went abroad. And went mountain hiking. I mean, I never thought I'd go up a mountain. I'd never seen a mountain before. We went to Switzerland, and it was very educational, really. I mean, I had been away. I had been away with my parents to France, but the activities we did in Switzerland with the group were pretty different. It was very different because you had to go on the train. We all went on the train, and then walked from the station. It somehow made you feel very grown up. You weren't taken on a coach. And I loved the house. I loved Skeet. And I just loved everything that we did on the weekends there. Oh, really important. I mean, the club couldn't run without the voluntary managers. Many of them did activities, and then they did admin, or they did the desk, sat at the desk, do the attendance. They were also, some of them, involved in the social work for the East End, for the Jewish kids, if there were free dinners and Children's Country Holiday Fund, things like that, which was another organisation where money was given so that kids could have a holiday. So if children couldn't afford a holiday who were Brady members, then the Children's Country Holiday Fund would pay for them to go to camp or pay for them to go to Littlehampton or whatever it was. Yeah. And so some of the managers did that. Some of the managers were complete outsiders that had come along as volunteers, and then others were members who had gone through the club. There was a rule, if I remember rightly, that they had to go away for 2 years and not be involved in the club before they could be a manager. They couldn't just finish club and become a manager. But they were very important. And of course they came to Skeet to help, and some of them came on the holidays abroad to help. Not just young, but most of them had achieved things in their lives, and therefore that was really important and as a role model. And to move on with the times, and become more modern. They were certainly more modern than Miss Moses and Miss Benjamin, I think that she did find that important, but also without the club, many of the girls, especially in the beginning, what did they have? They had nothing. They just had their home life. And don't forget, in those days, they finished school at a much younger age. So I think, you know, she wanted to enlarge their experience of life. Never as a member or later on did, as far as I know, any girls there feel inferior to the boys in any way, because they had totally equal opportunities at the club in everything. Well, it gave me a social life. I met boys. I went to a girls' school. I was one of three sisters, so I lived a very girly life. So it was interesting to meet the boys. I had boy cousins, but that was a completely new experience for me, really. And to eventually have a boyfriend, you know. Otherwise, I would never have met anyone. So I think that was really important, and friendships. I mean, friendships from club life have lasted all our lives, and you don't often get that deep friendships. And as we're experiencing now when we have to go to so many funerals. So I think that was lovely. And to just get out of our environment. I mean, although, you know, we lived in a council flat, didn't want to sit in there all the time. And to be able to go out and about was terrific, really, really wonderful. Well, it enlarged my opportunities. I mean, I did have opportunities. I think, you know, my parents were quite progressive and always pushed us to do things. I mean, a lot of us from Brady, we used to go after school to the Whitechapel Art Gallery, and they had wonderful facilities for us there, where we did every kind of arts and crafts free that you can think of. And it was just fantastic. I mean, my sister's an artist, a professional artist, and it all started there, you know. We did have other opportunities. I think possibly in the East End, in those days, we had more opportunities than the kids have got now, for sure. I became a leader at Brady Club after I had been a play centre leader at Oxford and St George's. My husband, David Dreyer, was the boys' club leader at Oxford and St George's. We had both been to Israel. We both had been on Machon, not together. David went first. I met him, and then I went. And then we were going to move, actually, to Liverpool, where the club at Liverpool wanted David to be the youth director. And then Brady got to hear that we were on the move, and they contacted David and asked him to come see Frank Austin, who was the chairman, and asked him to come to his house in Bishop's Avenue for a meeting. The butler let David in and took him into the music room, and there he had a meeting with a few of them from the executive, where they told him that Yogi was leaving, and they offered him the job of the youth director. David was young. He was 27, so it was very, very young for such a position. It was just after youth leaders had to become qualified, and David had just completed his qualification while working at Oxford. We all had to do that while we were working, you see. I mean, now they qualify first. And then they offered me the job of the girls' club leader. And they offered us a flat. We did live in Oxford and St George's as well. So we were on the move. We went to Brady. This was frowned on by some because they were rival clubs, and some of the old managers, very old managers, were, especially at Oxford, were furious with David. but we went, and of course Brady was not strange to me, and we loved it. But David made a lot of changes there, and because he was a new and young leader, so things became different, and he modernised it. All the admin, organise everything, liaise with all the managers, have meetings with them, the membership of the club, and of course the links with the outside bodies and organisations, arrange all the dates and calendars, run the weekends away at Skeet. It was often a 7-day week at Brady, because not only did we have Skeet, but we had Sundays which were a day full of sport. And it was a very busy day, Sundays at Skeet. We sometimes had like 500-600 kids come back there after having played different things, sports and games and things. The relationship between the leaders and the managers was, first of all, very close. We worked very closely together, and they, if someone new wanted to come, then they would apply to David first, and then if it was a girl, they would meet me. If it was a woman, and some of them, of course, were old girls. We didn't have that many old girls become managers, and we'd had a chairman of the managers, but we had regular meetings. And that was the running and the function of the club, based on them and what they were doing and what they wanted to do. They all had different interests. And of course, some of the managers are still involved today with Brady. Dennis Bonney, he was our manager that ran all the athletics and football. Did a very good job and a very big job with hundreds of youngsters, girls and boys. And his late wife, Rita, she was one of our managers as well, helped us at the club. So very long-standing relationships. Well, we had new activities and different activities that we introduced. And we had always mixed camps. David introduced mixed camps, and that was very different and very, very modern and far-thinking, forward-thinking. Of course, we still ran the mixed weekends at Skeet, and they grew very popular. See, when we first went there, the Jewish community in the East End was on the demise, and it was getting much, much smaller. The aim of Brady, when they interviewed David, was to run the East End until there were very few there, which they visualised would be within a year, and move the club to North London. But because of David's vision and because of the helpers that we attract, the managers that we attract, we suddenly attracted hundreds of new members. They used to travel to us, mainly from Essex, from Gants Hill, from Redbridge. They came in their hordes to this new modern club. So we couldn't close down and move, and so we stayed open. I mean, we had a manager, Stephen Fishman, who was in charge of socials and dances, and he was young, and he actually became my brother-in-law, and then he had this vision and knew about music and bands, and he booked Jimi Hendrix to come to perform at a dance before he was such a big name. But of course, when the time came for Jimi Hendrix to come, he was a big global star, and they did try to get out of the contract, but they couldn't. Well, I cannot tell you what Hanbury Street was like that night, because we could only let in the numbers that we were insured for. But outside, the whole of Hanbury Street was throbbing with young people, and you could hear Jimi Hendrix out there. So they were all dancing in the street. And it was just amazing, absolutely amazing. And he did everything, you know, broke his guitar and it did the whole show. So, you know, we really had a name for being a modern youth club. And it just attracted more and more youngsters. We had about 1,000 youngsters going through each week, yes. Of course, we started with the play centre and then each club. Yeah, and I mean, we never had quiet nights, ever. It was always full. Brady was a Jewish club for Jewish youngsters. We did have one or two non-Jewish youngsters there, but it was most definitely a Jewish club. It was under the banner of the Orthodox shul. In fact, the chief rabbi used to come to Brady quite often for festivals. All Jewish festivals were celebrated. All food was strictly kosher. Skeet was strictly kosher kitchen. Most of the youngsters were used to this because they came from kosher homes. At camp, for instance, Friday night was celebrated and the candles were lit and the wine was taken and we'd have a service and a traditional Friday night dinner. For my time where Hebrew classes were held for the little ones and the girls, that didn't happen when we were there, that had finished. Because we'd been on the Machon in Israel, David brought this very close link with Israel, and we had the shliach always, which is someone who comes from Israel to work with us for a year. So one of them introduced the memorial for the Holocaust, where we had a very big memorial service that all the youngsters took part in and put on, and that became a new thing. I mean, even when we were abroad, you know, we were in Italy, and we were attached to the youth hostel that we stayed in was attached to the Catholic Church. And we didn't have any candles for Friday night. They gave me the big candles from the church. But luckily, we found a Jewish family in the town. They owned a knitwear shop and they had candles that we could use for Shabbat. So everything was celebrated, but also I think there was also education through the Israeli link that we had. And then we had a lot of youngsters go on the various trips and educational trips to Israel. The shalichim and the youth workers came over from Israel for the link, because they wanted to link up here. It was very important to Israel that they attracted young people, and therefore that link of the shlich coming over here inspired many hundreds, because a lot of the clubs had shlichim, inspired many hundreds to go and live in Israel, or certainly go there for a while. The shlich was coming from Israel, Yafet Yeshuahu, who was a huge success with the kids, huge success. And he ended up marrying one of our managers and taking her back to Israel. But he was late in coming, and David had to go to the advance party to erect the camp. And it was in the Isle of Wight. So David left instructions that when Yafet arrived, I had to send him to the Isle of Wight. So he did arrive, and he got on the train, and then when he was told to get off the train and get on the ferry, Yaphet thought he was being deported. Well, having been the leader there, both my children were born while I was at Brady. They were born over the road at the London hospital. So my kids were Brady members from birth, and very much part of the club. They were, they were always around. Once they could walk, all the members, we used to see them toddling around. And it was very much our home. And I don't know, it was very difficult for me when I moved out of Brady into a house. I didn't cope very well at all. I was used to this sort of communal living always. We were a vital part of the East End. Georgia Brown made a programme, One Pair of Eyes. Georgia Brown was a Brady girl, and she was the first Nancy for Oliver on the stage in London. And they came to Brady for a week to film everything with her at the club. And that, that really put us on the map even more so, because this was on television, this programme. And it was incredible. So it was, Brady became like a global name, really, while we were there. And we had all sorts of, VIPs and things come, and who we had to entertain and explain things to. Georgia Brown thought that we should be more open and take non-Jews and other groups from the East End into the club. First of all, our club was full. We weren't in need of any more members, and I don't think we could have coped with any more. I don't think, as far as we know, the local people never really wanted to come into Brady, and so we were never asked or requested. So, but we certainly had links with the local community, because we were on the committees at all the schools, and definitely advise people on what to do. David and I ran training groups very often for other clubs and other community groups. I think the demise of the youth service has led to all the violence and stabbings and dreadful lives that young people live today. And not only are there no youth clubs, but there is just nothing for them. I mean, they build tower blocks without a place for the kids to play. Not that a mother could let the children go all the way down from 14 floors to play downstairs. When we had council flats, they were, I think the tallest was in the Ocean Estate that we knew, and it was about 8 stories. But the flats were always built with a playground, and kids always used the playground. And that created a community. They don't have that now. They just build flats, and there's nowhere for the kids to play. I think if we had a proper youth service, then we wouldn't have half the problems that we have today of any sort. And also, I think we need more after-school clubs where they can use the school's facilities and have youth clubs in there and different classes and activities. I think a lot of the problem also is when they are given money to start a youth club, then they say, oh yes, well, we let the kids play their music and be DJs. This is not what you need. I think a club and leaders, youth workers, are there to stretch the youngsters and to give them new opportunities that they don't normally have. Just to do the same thing that they're doing in their bedroom, that is not a youth centre, and that won't achieve its aims. When the funding was stopped for the youth leaders, that's when even the Jewish clubs started to close. And it's such a vital, it's a necessity. I mean, look how old all the clubs were. And how can you have no youth service at all? And it doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist. They have places where maybe the kids can go for help or talk to people, but kids need recreation. Kids need to play, and they don't play. They need organised play. Yeah, they've got some sports clubs and they're very successful, and the boxing clubs are still very successful, and boxing clubs were around when the youth clubs were around. They were as old. Repton Club had a very close relationship with the Jewish clubs, but they need proper youth clubs and youth centres and youth leaders. I don't know where the youth leaders are today. We don't seem to have them. I don't even think there's a course that trains them anymore. And until something like that is done, things, I think, will get worse and worse. It's down to the government to have a youth service. A youth service must be part of their lives, just as education is. You wouldn't suddenly do away with all the schools, and you shouldn't do away with all the youth clubs. They should be reinvented and reopened, and money needs to be invested and training needs to be given. I hope you're sending it to the government.